Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. DB333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, the New Order, the known as the United Kingdom. In the last video, we've crushed the rest of the rebels in Cornwall. We're moving to reunite with our forces still in Scotland. And we're even taking back Wales a little bit, which is nice to see. We'll see if we can't do a little bit of a encirclement over here, start to wear down some of their troops. But we'll have to wait and see. Let's make sure that 2 billion in liquid reserves, goddamn. Let's make sure Lothian survives the winter. Scotland, our great ally in the Union and partner, has fallen under the occupation of the rebels. The Highlanders are totally under the control of the resistance. The lowlands are quickly falling under their control. Our last and great fortification in the region lies in Edinburgh, the true seat of power in Scotland. If we hold on there, we may yet have the opportunity to halt their quick expansion and eventually take Scotland back. Well, there we go. Medic! Medic! We need a medic now! Ben was almost paralyzed with panic as he desperately shouted for aid among the din of the battlefield. The soldier he was cradling was bleeding heavily from his shoulder, a bullet having just gone straight through it. It was almost impossible to hear whether help for the poor man was coming or not, over all the screaming and shouting as his comrades charged onwards into the gunfire. The soldier coughed briefly. "Just stay with me, mate, yeah? Help will be on the way soon. You have a name?" A moment passed, and Ben feared that the soldier just passed away in his arms. "Adolf. My name is Adolf." Ben sighed with relief. That explained the German military insignia on his clothes with relief. "Adolf, eh? Well, I suppose no great wonder who you're named after, then." He joked, trying to lighten the mood. The German looked to be round his age, a youthful face with only a wisp of a blonde mustache growing. Ben briefly wondered whether he had even chosen to join the garrison like he had the army, and that he probably had family as well. He let out a wet gurgle that could be construed as a laugh. "Well, that is what many of you Englishmen think. But it was actually my uncle Adolf Hans, not the Führer." A loud bang came out about 5 meters away, and that smile faded. Go. There is no use in dying for me." There was a grim determination on his face, but Ben would not be rattled. "I'm not leaving another man behind. I don't know how they do it in Germany, but over here we take care of our soldiers. It's just a flesh wound anyway. Now, medic!" he shouted once again, his throat searing in pain. Eventually one did arrive, dragging Adolf away on a stretcher. Shaking himself, Ben charged back into the fighting. He had a job to do. He could only hope that it hadn't been for nothing. I'll actually see if I can... Can I pin that guy? Try to move there. Actually, this works better than I thought it would. Because like that... And once Edna and Rodney successfully overcome the initial blockade, Elizabeth Martin will sneak through and steal the files. They've got key details on the movements of oil supplies, so if we pull this one off, well, we'll be dealing a major blow to the government's forces in the region. Any questions? The room was silent. Following Bill's explanation of a plan, a map was laid out in front of the soldiers, detailing how the operation was meant to go. Nobody was saying much until a man with a ratty beard and sour expression raised his hand. Bill nodded him. "Yes, Martin?" We don't have weaponry. We'll distribute the police route there. And we'll set up artillery there. The room was mostly silent following Bill's explanation of the plan. A map was laid out on the table in front of the soldiers, detailing how the operation was meant to go. Nobody was saying much until a man with a ratty beard and a sour expression raised his hand. Bill nodded him. Yes, Martin? If the plan is meant to be as important as you say, then why is it being done by those two? He said, pointing at the women. Excuse me, Emma said, instantly defective. Look, no offense, sweetheart. I'm sure you're both lovely, but this is a war. It's no place for either of you. The others in the room looked aghast. Years in the HoI made Martin a bit insensitive at times, but they didn't realize he would come out with something like this. Elizabeth stormed over to him, the face like thunder. We are not delicate little flowers in need of protection. I don't care who the hell you think you are. Say that about us again, and I'll show you whose place it is whose in a minute, mates. Feeling obviously challenged, Martin stood up, being considerably taller by Elizabeth. Would you like to test that out, love? He asked. Emma immediately bolted over to her lover, glaring at the men. Try us, you fucking I'll give it a rest for a lot of you! Bill bellowed, bringing out all eyes back to him. In case you've all forgotten, we're in a war for the very soul of the country. I don't give a crap what's between your legs in this situation, and neither should anyone else. If you're too immature to handle that, then get out! The room was silent once more. Still glaring at Martin, Emma sat back down, Elizabeth behind her. Bill nodded. Good. Now, as I was saying... Oh, the rebellion won. Nixon was not impeached for nothing. He wasn't impeached for nothing. Maybe, rather. After Century 400. Interesting. The mess tent was crowded. Nearly to bursting. So that only half the fighters had a chair or somewhere to sit. The rest stood, straining to see or hear the object of every single person in the tent's attention. A small portable radio, carefully placed on an unused mess table at the center of the tent. After a moment's fiddling, followed by a thumbs up from a technician, the radio cracked to life. In decades past, we have witnessed the rise of what can only be described as a great steel curtain across Europe, proclaimed the staticky voice of Harold Macmillan. Under its impressive grip, culture, civilization, and history are all ground underfoot by a vile, butcherous barbarism. One dedicated purely and simply to the enslavement of a continent. Regardless of our differences in that conflict, those peoples subjugated by the swastika now share a common bond. One of the shackled, seeking to cast off their chains from Edinburgh to Moscow. We see the depths of their struggle across the Nazi Empire, a struggle that must not be allowed to fail. Whatever our differences or creeds, they must all be set aside for this titanic effort to succeed. A second voice was overheard the radio now, replacing the dignified Edwardian voice of Macmillan. In a free nation, those differences were once celebrated, declared Michael Foote. It could be said that there was nothing more British than to express one's confidence or one's lack of confidence in ideas. Yet now, country is divided in two, in a far graver way, by those fighting for a free England, and those dedicated to subjugation. It is for this reason that I, and the Prime Minister in exile, urge you to remember that whatever our differences in striving for a free England, what is important is that we strive together. A common sentiment that all fighting for a free Britain, whatever their beliefs, a certainty that Britons never, ever shall be slaves. Sounds like some libtard shit. Get out of here. There we go. We got an encirclement down. The Odessa hostage crisis. Interesting. Yeah, if we can make sure to crush these blokes, we'll have you go over to Carlisle. This is all coming together nicely, I think. Let's work on Yorkshire, which will not fall. It might have already, but Though much of our northern heartland is lost to social traders who have left resistance, a few cities have resisted the Red Terror, while most cities in the north have been taken over by communist unions who have been deluded by traders' forces into believing that they are fighting for the workers. Yorkshire stands defiant against verbal forces. Only if we reinforce and preserve our holdings there do we have the possibility of winning the war in the north and bringing unity to Britain. There we go. Crush these blokes over here. And we've unified our fronts. And what I must say is a beautiful display. Let's see if we can encircle a few other guys. If only like one unit. Nothing too crazy, but one unit at a time, you know? The smoky streets of London were crowded beyond belief, packed by civilians desperately trying to salvage which goods they could before the war came to the city. After such a teeming mass of people, James Carter knew he'd have an even easier time blending in than usual. 2 decades made blending in almost second nature to him. Stay at home, outside work, no close friends, avoid personal conversations, and practice stories. Simple rules, but one that, along with his natural shyness and loyal family friends, had kept him alive. As he turned the corner to Grim Alleyway, he heard a brief pang of guilt for the last part. Mr. and Mrs. Carter hadn't been under any obligation to take him in or to forge documents and name for him. He'd work hard to repay them, helping Mrs. Carter around the home and earning what he could for Siemens or IG Farben. For how little attention the boss was paid, he'd stolen a timer here, some chemicals and metal shards there. Over time, he put his knowledge from his old life to use, putting it all together into a heavy device, now weighing down his right coat pocket. Just a few more blocks, drunk soldiers eavesdropped on pub were far from the most reliable sources, but he knew his target well enough to know the cunt wouldn't miss a chance to speak like this. His patience was rewarded. After a few minutes of walking, he could hear the cunt's voice, even readier than it had sounded, selling out his countrymen on the radio. Peering out of an alley, he saw a familiar face in a suit, addressing a group of uniformed soldiers. "You young men are a defense against Judaism and liberalism," announced the MP. "Ah, what else for young men would never be known." Filled with rage, Eli reached into his coat and threw before taking off the alley in a sprint. Even without looking back, he could identify the pain screams of the voice that had haunted him so long. It would haunt him and his people no more. Structure will not fall. Isn't that... I think that's Gorbachev's potential faction. Without pride, we are nothing. The history of Britain is long, storied, and great, filled to the brim with great men who have shaped the world in Britain's image. It's not the first time Britain has been challenged. We have faced internal divisions before, from the anarchy that brought ruin to the kingdoms to the Jacobins who sought to tear down the beloved Union. Time and time again, Britain has been challenged and laid waste by internal enemies. Yet we've not only survived, but prospered in the wake of their failures. This foolish rebellion shall be nothing more than a roadblock in our ultimate success. A footnote in a long and glorious story of our isles. Holidays have always been quiet for Emma. Her parents would wake her up early in the morning to go to service in the local church before they would head back home to open however many presents they could afford that year. If it was snowing, she would go outside to play in it with her friends before they called her in for a large dinner. Of course, as she grew older, there was less frolicking around in the snow and more sneaking in illicitly gained bottles of beer, but the spirit remained the same. This Christmas was very different, to say the least. For one, she was not gently roused from a comfortable bed, but awoken at 5 in the morning by a loud screeching noise. She shot up, blearily trying to reach for a gun she kept at her bedside. Elizabeth was quicker, leaping out of bed and looking around. "What is that? Emma! Wake up, Emma! What the hell is that? She asked, as her partner shook herself awake. No idea, she said, running outside. It turned out they'd all been equally as confused. Old Bill later clarified that it was a faulty air raid siren that had been triggered by the snow. He hadn't seen this as a downside, however. The factory leader of his cell, as he had gotten everyone to participate in gift-giving exchange, and the early get-up only meant that they could do it earlier. So there, Emma and Elizabeth sat, drinking the lukewarm mugs of tea and trying to fight off the bitingly cold air that threatened to come into their tent. So, I couldn't exactly scrounge up much for Sia, but... She paused, before producing a necklace. It was my mum's. It's not worth much, but I swiped it before he ran away. Elizabeth immediately began cooing over it, draping it over her neck. Oh, it's lovely, darling. You shouldn't have, she said, starting to rummage for her bag. Then she's produced a small picture, passing it to Emma. Here's mine. It was less costly, of course, but I did have to bribe Ginger with a few cigarettes. As Emma looked at it, she realized what it was. It was a picture of their cell in that old cigarette factory, grinning and smiling. She had meant to ask for a copy, but they hadn't had the time. Her heart melted, smiling at her partner. I couldn't ask for anything more. Are we gonna get this encirclement off? I don't think we will. Although... no. It was worth a shot. Wasn't gonna be much of an encirclement anyway. And actually... let's see if we can't... get a little bit of an encirclement off up here. Across this great nation, our brothers and sisters die to protect our kingdom against rebel elements who seek to tear apart the very fabric of our society. After a long period of stability that Prime Minister Donville gave our country, this nation was thrown into disarray by these terrorists. Because of their actions, Britain see hardships they haven't seen since wartime years. For what purpose? To tear down the traditions. These terrorists want to make Britain slaves of the Americans, whose Anglo-Saxon people struggle against an ever-increasing encroachment on their rights. The so-called resistance only wishes to bring race war, class warfare, and anarchy to this esteemed isle. Our history is a glorious one. Our people, first living as tribesmen in northern Germany, moved to these isles and tamed their wild marshes to turn to one of the greatest kingdoms of the medieval world. Not content to sit idle, we spread out to conquer the hills of Wales and the mountains of Scotland next. For our isle completely ours, we turned our eyes to the sea, and from Ireland to America, India and Oceania, we spread our civilization from one corner of the earth to another. All this was done under the auspices of our sovereign and legitimate government, which acted in its name. These golden years culminate in the Victorian era, the Pax Britannica. Britain ruled the waves, and we are the unchallenged rulers of the world. And yet, we allowed subversive elements to create a rot in our society. Under the pretext of liberty, just as the resistance claims now, our own institutions were slowly destroyed one by one. These subversives' final victory was achieved in the Second World War, in which our glorious empire collapsed. Only in the last few years has Britain been finding its greatness once again, with the assistance of our Germanic brothers. This is what the resistance wishes to stop. They want to end our national renewal before it has even begun. All in the name of democracy, they'd sooner make us a republic and tear down the last vestiges of our cherished heritage. Stand with our kingdom. Stand with our king. Fight for your heritage. Well, half-truth is still a truth. We haven't been working on the Air Force, really. Well, let's get working on some jet fighters. And we'll see how those turn out in the next video, because I'm going to end it here. Thanks for always watching, gang. I never figured out. Well, we don't have any airplanes in reserve, that's why. Anyway, thanks for always watching, gang. Like, dislike if you didn't. Leaving comments or feedback down in the comment section below. Ooh, encirclement in Birmingham. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, check out my various links down in the description box below. Hit the sub button for notification bell if you haven't already. And I think that's going to be it for now, my friends. I thank you all for watching. My name has been Mr. Dogbot333, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye now.